First up, the United States is on high alert and preparing for a possible attack by Iran, targeting Israeli or American assets in the region in response to Israel's strike on the Iranian embassy in Syria. Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps has said that 7 Iranian military advisors died in the strike, including Mohammad Reza Zahidi, a senior commander of its Quds Force, which is an elite foreign espionage and paramilitary arm. Iran also said that it reserves the right to take a decisive response. US President Joe Biden has discussed the threat from Iran on a phone call on Thursday with Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. And Lebanon's armed group Hezbollah on Friday said that Israel's strike on Iran's consulate in Damascus marked a turning point in the Israel-Gaza conflict. In a set of televised remarks, Hezbollah leader Hassan Nasrallah said that the Hezbollah supports Iran's right to punish Israel and a response from Iran's side is coming soon. Meanwhile, Israel has braced itself for the possibility of a retaliatory attack, cancelling leave for all combat units and mobilizing more troops for air defense units. A Hamas delegation headed by the group's deputy chief in Gaza, Khalid al-Hayya, will go to Cairo on the 7th of April, which is on Sunday, for Gaza ceasefire talks in response to an invitation extended by Egyptian mediators, the group said on a statement on Saturday. Hamas reiterated its demands issued on the 14th of March in its proposal prior to a UN Security Council resolution calling for a ceasefire in the Gaza Strip that was passed on the 25th of March. According to a statement by the Hamas, the demands include a permanent ceasefire, the withdrawal of Israeli forces from Gaza, a return of the displaced, and a serious exchange deal for Palestinian prisoners for Israeli hostages being held in Gaza. US President Joe Biden has written letters to Egyptian President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi and the Emir of Qatar, Sheikh Tamim bin Hamad Al Thani, on the state of the hostage talks, and he urged them to secure commitments from Hamas to agree and abide by a deal. CIA Director Bill Burns will lead the US delegation to the Cairo talks. The US and its allies view a ceasefire as essential to allowing more humanitarian aid to get into Gaza. Under the most recent proposal, Israel and Hamas would agree to a 6-week ceasefire in exchange for the release of sick, elderly and wounded hostages held by Hamas. Israel also announced it was opening the Ashdod port and the Erez crossing to increase the flow of aid into Gaza, while White House National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan will meet the families of the hostages at the White House on Monday. And DD India's Alex Kedea has more on these developments from Tel Aviv.
The United States sending CIA Director Bill Burns to Cairo to continue these talks. The head of Shin Bet, Ronan Bar, Shin Bet is the Israeli security agency, as well as the intelligence chief David Barnea, will also be in Cairo to continue these talks, the urgency of which really brought home to many Israelis today, as the Israeli Defense Forces confirming that they have recovered the body, very sadly, of one of those hostages, 47-year-old Elad Katsir, who the IDF says was killed in captivity by Palestinian Islamic Jihad, really showing the pressure on those negotiators to find a deal, pressure reiterated by President Biden, who told Prime Minister Netanyahu to give his negotiators, the head of Shin Bet, the head of the Mossad, enough room to operate to reach a deal. President Biden also sending a letter to the Emir of Qatar and the President of Egypt for them to put pressure on Hamas to reach some kind of agreement. But at the moment, the last proposal by Israel, 40 vulnerable Israeli hostages, the women being held in Gaza, as well as the elderly and injured, would be released against 700 Palestinian prisoners, including 100 serving life sentences. That was the last deal refused by Hamas. A new proposal by Israel has effectively gotten no response from Hamas, who say it is basically the same deal as last time. So clearly, despite that pressure, despite international efforts to get a deal, despite the heartbreaking tragedy of the body of a hostage being recovered and the devastating humanitarian situation in Gaza, at the moment, a deal seems still quite far away.
And away from all this, 2 explosions were witnessed close to the Israel-Lebanon border on Saturday. The first blast took place around 12:30 p.m. local time, close to the Lebanese side of the border, followed by a second blast a short distance away. Cross-border firing, including airstrikes and artillery shells, have been going on between Israel and Lebanese armed group Hezbollah since the Israel-Gaza conflict was sparked off. Meanwhile, Israel has dismissed 2 of its officers and formally reprimanded senior commanders after finding grave errors in the strike on aid workers. The move comes after Israel made public the findings of an inquiry into the unintended killing of 7 aid workers. The inquiry found Israeli forces mistakenly believing that they were attacking Hamas gunmen when drones hit the 3 vehicles of the World Central Kitchen Aid Group late on Monday night, and that standard procedures had not been followed. The killing of the 7 aid workers, who included citizens of Britain, Australia and Poland, a dual US-Canadian national and a Palestinian colleague, stirred global outrage this week. After the publication of the findings, World Central Kitchen has demanded an independent commission to investigate the entire incident. The Israeli military has dismissed a brigade chief of staff with the rank of colonel and a brigade fire support officer with the rank of a major. Senior officers, including the general at the head of the Southern Command, were also formally reprimanded.
The investigation found that the WCK coordinated everything correctly with the IDF in advance. The findings of the investigation show that there were, in fact, a number of armed gunmen who boarded and left some of the vehicles that were identified during the course of the event. After some of the vehicles split from the others, the forces that were tracking the vehicles that went south did so thinking that these were Hamas vehicles, that Hamas gunmen had entered. This operational misidentification and misclassification was the result of internal failures that led to a critical information regarding the humanitarian operation to not go properly down to the chain of command. The soldiers conducted the strike without any awareness that these were in fact WCK vehicles. At the time, they were certain that they were targeting Hamas.
The UN chief has said that he sincerely hopes Israel will quickly and effectively boost aid access to the Gaza Strip, describing the situation in the Palestinian enclave after 6 months of fighting as absolutely desperate.
Following this week's appalling killing of 7 humanitarian workers from World Central Kitchen, the Israeli government has acknowledged mistakes and announced some disciplinary measures. But the essential problem is not who made the mistakes. It is the military strategy and procedures in place that allow for those mistakes to multiply time and time again. Fixing those failures requires independent investigations and meaningful and measurable changes on the ground. In the aftermath of this tragedy, the United Nations was also informed by the Israeli government of its intention to allow a substantial increase in humanitarian aid distributed in Gaza. I sincerely hope that these announced intentions are effectively and quickly materialized, because the situation in Gaza is absolutely desperate.
Israel has approved the reopening of the Erez crossing into northern Gaza and temporary use of the Ashdod port in southern Israel after US President Joe Biden demanded steps to alleviate the humanitarian crisis in Gaza, saying conditions could be placed on US support for Israel if it did not act. Now, the World Central Kitchen Aid Organization has called for an independent investigation into the killing of 7 of its workers by Israeli drone strikes in Gaza. The request has come after the Israeli Defense Forces said grave mistakes led to the fatal targeting of staff from charity World Central Kitchen. An Israeli military inquiry led to 2 senior officers being dismissed and reprimanded 3 others for their involvement in drone strikes in Gaza that resulted in the deaths of 7 aid workers. However, CEO of the aid group said the Israeli military cannot credibly investigate its own failure in Gaza. Australia on Saturday said it would appoint a special advisor to work with Israel to ensure full confidence in investigations into an airstrike in Gaza that killed 7 aid workers, including an Australian. Australian Foreign Minister Penny Wong, in a televised media conference in Adelaide, said, and I quote, "The government will appoint a special advisor." She further said that Australia wants to have full confidence in the transparency and accountability of any investigation.
We expect that if the investigation finds that IDF personnel have not acted in accordance with the law or procedures, that appropriate action be taken against those personnel and that such action be made public.
India has voted in favour of a draft resolution in the UN Human Rights Council that reaffirmed the right of the Palestinian people to self-determination, including the right to their independent state of Palestine. The draft resolution on the right of the Palestinian people to self-determination was adopted in the Geneva-based council, with 42 member states, including India, voting in favour. The UNHRC adopted a total of 5 resolutions, including one calling for an immediate ceasefire in Gaza, urging states to prevent transfer of Palestinians within and from Gaza, and calling on states to cease sale of arms to Israel. The resolution also called for Israel to be held accountable for possible war crimes and crimes against humanity committed in Gaza. 28 countries voted in favour, 13 abstained, including India, and 6 voted against the resolution, including the US and Germany. In the latest from the Russia-Ukraine conflict, a Russian strike on Ukraine's Kharkiv on Saturday killed 6 people and injured at least 10 others. Ukraine's national police said the attack was launched by drones. A high-rise apartment building was damaged and a shop was ablaze in the fresh attacks. Air raid alerts remained in place for Kharkiv and most of the country, including capital Kyiv, for several hours after the strikes. And in another action, Russia fired 5 missiles in Ukraine's southern city of Zaporizhia, killing at least 3 people, injuring over 20 and damaging several residential buildings. Ukraine's Air Force issued a ballistic missile raid alert for the region, part of which is occupied by Russia, and Moscow has recently stepped up usage of ballistic missiles that are harder to intercept. And still to come on DD India Live, Philippines and China trade accusations over an encounter in the disputed waters of the South China Sea. And on her visit to China, US Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen says Chinese overcapacity issue won't be solved soon. Last, US President Joe Biden pledges to rebuild Francis Scott Key Bridge in Baltimore following its collapse.
Why is everybody ready to quit the Congress party, and most particularly those who are associated with its media department?
When we felt that the Congress party did not stand up on issues that were important for this nation.
A spokesperson cannot defend what is indefensible. They do that very heavy cost of their own conscience, and that is when they feel suffocated.
This is now an election between Congress Rahul Gandhi and Congress Narendra Modi. So it's Congress versus Congress in 2024.
Welcome back. You're watching DD India Live. I'm Gautam Roy. China and the Philippines are accusing one another over an encounter in the South China Sea. Responding to a claim by the Philippines on Saturday, China said that several ships belonging to the Philippines entered waters of the Nansha Islands falling under Beijing sovereignty. Earlier, the Philippines stated that China harassed the fishing vessels within Manila's exclusive economic zone in the South China Sea. Although China claims almost the entire South China Sea, it called the operation professional and in accordance with standards. Taking to social media site X, spokesperson of the Philippines Coast Guard, J. Tarela, wrote that the 2 Chinese Coast Guard vessels started harassing the Filipino fishing boats. Chinese Coast Guard vessels threatened the fishermen with water cannons and denied them access to the resources of the exclusive economic zone. US, Japan, Australia and the Philippines Defence Forces have confirmed to hold a one-day maritime cooperative activity in Manila's exclusive economic zone in the South China Sea on Sunday. The exercises involved communication activities and officers of the watch maneuvers in the region as it aims to support a free and open Indo-Pacific. The activity will strengthen the interoperability of the country's armed forces doctrines, tactics, techniques and procedures. The maritime activity is being carried out to reaffirm the position of the four nations, saying that the 2016 South China Sea Arbitral Tribunal Award is final and legally binding. The drill is being conducted days before a summit to be held between the leaders of these nations. U.S. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen and Chinese Vice Premier Haley Feng on Saturday announced plans for exchanges on balanced economic growth, aiming to address U.S. concerns over China's manufacturing capacity. Following talks in Guangzhou, both Yellen and Haley Feng agreed to establish a forum to combat money laundering in their financial systems.
The potential to flood our markets with exports that make it difficult for American firms to compete, and that other countries have the same concern. Now, this is a complicated issue that involves their entire macroeconomic and industrial strategy. It's not going to be solved in an afternoon or a month, but I think they have heard that this is an important issue to us.
Let's get you an update now on the Taiwan earthquake as well. But evacuees in Hualien County have said they were scared to go home after a deadly 7.3 magnitude earthquake struck Taiwan, collapsing buildings and rendering many residences unsafe to live in, with aftershocks continuing to rattle the island's eastern region. The Hualien County government said on Saturday that 201 buildings were damaged by the trembler and 150 people were having to stay in shelters. Earlier, 2 bodies were found on Friday in the mountains of Hualien County, putting the number of missing at 13, 3 of them being foreigners from Australia and Canada. U.S. President Joe Biden has vowed to rebuild the Francis Scott Key Bridge in the city of Baltimore after it collapsed last week. During a visit to Baltimore on Friday, President Biden observed the crash site, spoke with local officials and also met the families of the deceased.
We keep working hard to recover each of them. And you know, my vow is that we will not rest, as Carlos said, until the cement has dried on the entirety of a new bridge. A new bridge. So I've directed the Coast Guard, the Navy, and the Army Corps of Engineers, who are, by the way, the finest engineers in the world, and the state officials to work together to help remove this steel as quickly as possible and as safely as possible.
A cargo boat lost power and hit the structure, bringing it down and killing 6 construction workers on the 26th of last month. The unnamed 20-man crew, all but one of whom are Indian citizens, survived. They remain stranded on the ship. And DD India's Benji Hai has more on this from Washington, D.C.
Touring the wreckage, President Joe Biden says he's ordered his administration to move heaven and earth to rebuild the major crossing, paying homage to those who died. That rebuilding effort, though, cannot happen until the debris is cleared, a process that may take many, many weeks. The vessel is still lodged in the tangled metal, its crew still on board, and it's blocking a vital shipping route in and out of the port, one of the busiest in America. Now, the US Army's plan is to fully reopen the port of Baltimore by the end of May. The Department of Transportation's already released $60 million in emergency aid in the immediate wake of the disaster. That's what the White House refers to as a down payment for initial costs. A full restoration, though, will require much, much more. But here, already in the capital, there's a war of words underway. In a letter to Congress, the administration says that the federal government should pay for for reconstructing the bridge. Yet the House Freedom Caucus, that's a group of hardline Republican lawmakers, they say they won't support that funding unless Joe Biden agrees to a number of concessions that they've laid out. The House of Representatives and the Senate both reconvene next week. Back in Baltimore, the president used his short address to put pressure on Congress. That's a message that he hopes will be heard 70 kilometres south in the capital. Benji Haya in Washington, reporting for DD India.
And let's now get you the latest on the world's largest democratic election that's unfolding in India. Now, with general elections in India just a few days away, the first phase beginning on the 19th of this month, all parties have intensified their campaigning. Senior BJP leader and Prime Minister Narendra Modi held a rally in the North Indian state of Uttar Pradesh. The city was Saharanpur on Saturday. Addressing the rally, the PM said that serving the nation is of prime importance to the ruling party BJP.
भाजपा के लिए राष्ट्र प्रथम है। ये भाजपा का नारा नहीं, भाजपा का आर्टिकल ऑफ फेथ है। ये हमारा विश्वास है, ये हमारी रगों में है, ये हमारे सपनों में है, ये हमारे संकल्प में है। राष्ट्र प्रथम हमारे लिए देश से बड़ा और कुछ नहीं है। देश हित से बड़ा और कुछ हो भी नहीं सकता। भाजपा से लोग सत्ता के लिए नहीं जुड़ते, बल्कि एक मिशन के लिए जुड़ते हैं। इसलिए भाजपा ने अपने सिद्धांतों, अपने संकल्पों को हमेशा राजनीतिक स्वार्थ से छोड़ करके राष्ट्रहित की सुप्रीमेसी के लिए ऊपर रखा है।
And the Prime Minister also conducted a rally in the northern Indian state of Rajasthan the same day. And during his address to voters in the city of Ajmer, Prime Minister Modi said that the BJP aims to remove corruption from the country and his government is well prepared to fight the corrupt. And after holding two rallies on Saturday, Prime Minister Modi will also hold a road show in the city of Ghaziabad in the northern state of Uttar Pradesh. Campaigning for the upcoming elections, Prime Minister Modi was accompanied by the state Chief Minister Yogi Adityanath during the road show, spread across 1400 meters. And Congress leaders, including Party President Mallikarjun Kharge and former President Sonia Gandhi, held a rally in Jaipur on Saturday to publicly launch the party's election manifesto. The public rally comes just a day after the Congress unveiled its manifesto for the 2024 Lok Sabha polls, outlining several key promises and commitments. Later in the evening, Rahul Gandhi, along with several senior Congress leaders, will hold a rally in Hyderabad city of the South Indian state of Telangana. Let's now look at some other updates that are coming in from around the country. Vice President of India and Chairperson of the Upper House of Parliament, Jagdeep Dhankar, administered the oath to elected members of the Rajya Sabha today. The oath-taking ceremony took place in Parliament House. India's External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar on Saturday said that 17 Indian workers who were lured into unsafe and illegal work in Laos are on their way back home. In a social media post, Dr. Jaishankar thanked the Indian Embassy in Laos and the authorities in the Southeast Asian country for the safe repatriation. With a hotter summer predicted in India this year, eastern city of Bhubaneswar in Odisha recorded the season's highest temperature at 43.5 degrees Celsius on Saturday. That's just towards the beginning of April. 8 people were admitted to different hospitals due to heat-related issues. According to weather authorities, severe heat wave will last for the next 2 days. And that's all we have in this edition of DD India Live, but do let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. You can connect with us on Facebook, X as well as Instagram. We'll be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I'm Gautam Roy, and from all of us here in Delhi, thanks for watching DD India Live.